a graduate student in the Student Affairs program at Clemson University, and today we have the pleasure of interviewing a former Clemson graduate from the Student Affairs program as well. He graduated in 2018.
Yes, thank you, Nika. My name is Elmer. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a proud, graduate of the Student Affairs program here at Clemson 2018. I currently serve as a student development coordinator at Duke University. I work in the Center for Multicultural Affairs. And my job really entails doing programmatic efforts for the whole campus in terms of diversity, inclusion, and social justice. And then also creating social justice dialogues for our students and just educating the student employees that I supervise with the basic knowledge and concepts of social justice. So that's a little bit of my role. Something that you should all know, I'm a first generation college graduate, so that has really shaped my experience in education, but also being 1.5 immigrant. I immigrated here when I was 7, so a lot of my education experiences has been in the United States. I remember a little bit about El Salvador, but it's mainly been here in the US, so that's the layered context that I have, being first gen, 1.5 immigrant, and then being classified as Latinx and race, whatever that means for me. Yeah.
So you were just talking about how your education was in the United States, specifically your undergraduate and graduate experiences. So could you talk a little bit about how your identity played a role inside the classroom and outside the classroom, and whether the education system and the teachers that you've had really capitalized on that, or maybe not so much?
Yeah, so Nika, I can tell you from K through my graduate experience, I can count the number of professors and educators of color that I've had, and it's less than 10, which is really, really sad for me, because I feel I've missed out on, learning from people that look like me, that have similar values or an understanding. But my experiences at George Mason University, where I did my undergrad, was a little bit different from Clemson, because although I didn't see educators of color that looked like me, I saw students that looked like me, and that was widely different. Following the pre-health track, it was mostly white educators that used an authoritarian teaching method of this is the knowledge and this is what you need to know, and you can't challenge that knowledge, or you can't be inquisitive of that knowledge. There's not pushback. It's this is the information, just learn it, which was very difficult when I'm still trying to figure out my identity, levels of imposter syndrome, feeling I didn't belong, and I had to find community and help in student affairs, because I saw more people that looked like me. So I gravitated to the multicultural office, the programming office, and then just made community with people that looked like me or that didn't look like me, but there was an understanding of the different identities we've had. So both my classroom experience and my outside of the classroom experience really complement themselves. And I think right now we see this divide between academic and student affairs, thinking that the only learning takes place in the classroom, and I don't think so. I think learning is taking place right now, sitting here with you all. It's here, so it doesn't stop. So I think just if I could get a message across, it's we should work together, student affairs and academic affairs, because there's learning that's happening, and we all have knowledge to produce to create a better experience for students, for all of our students.
With your experience with knowledge and creating that knowledge, I know that you said your graduate experience was a little different than your undergraduate experience. How did knowledge play into that, and how did that happen?
Yeah, so I think my graduate school experience is so different than undergrad, right? Undergrad, you're taking your general education courses. They're you might be passionate. Being first gen, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought I was gonna be an activist. Literally, I was is there a degree for activism? Because that's what I was passionate. But there wasn't. It wasn't until grad school where I saw more faculty of color, and being involved with the Action Research Collective at Clemson that Dr. Robin Phelps Ward ran, really empowered me to be more critical and analyze different things, and taking critical race theory with Dr. Kroom really opened my eyes and affirmed me. Like, my experiences inside and outside of the classroom were not peculiar or unique or not weird. Like, it gave me language to be like, oh, racism is endemic, like race is socially constructed. It gave me things that I was thinking about, but no educator was like talking about it or giving me like the opportunity to like challenge things that like we know. So I don't know, Clemson just gave me that opportunity to be more critical, to analyze different things that my undergraduate experience didn't, because it was so authoritarian and like, this is information, like you can't like push back on it, it's just like fact. But I know that there are different like ways of knowing, right? Like, in my culture, storytelling is a huge part. Like, I can tell you when I get sick, like I have to like call my grandma, and like, because we don't write down like the recipes, like home remedies, it's like passed down by generation to generation. So I think like being in the classroom with Dr. Phelps Ward, Dr. Groom, and Dr. Wagner, it really helped me that knowledge is not just like scholarly articles or the professor like teaching. It's like knowledge is everywhere, and there's different ways of knowing, and that's through music, through like bodily movements. It's not just on paper and what's being produced.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know at Clemson that we had a doctoral student a few years ago who did his dissertation or thesis in a rap album. So I think that speaks to your point about how knowledge can be passed down and disseminated through many different forms, and sometimes the most powerful way it can happen is through a culture-specific form of storytelling or beats or things like that. So
yeah. And recently there was a Peruvian woman who did her dissertation in Quiche, her native language. So it's like disrupting these ways of like, this is the only way that you can reproduce knowledge is, you know, it's powerful, because people are asking like, when are you going back to school? And I'm like hesitant, because I know how the system or PhD programs still really operate in one way of knowing, and I don't really want to reproduce that. I kind of want to disrupt that and actually do something that I can like serve my community with, like that knowledge.
Yeah, and I think that serving community, as an educator, I'm sure that's important for you to get across to your students as well. How do you use some of that experience of both your undergrad and graduate, and how you experience knowledge with your students?
I think being race conscious is like super important. Like for me, I work in the multicultural center, so some of the students that I see are students of color, but also when I work with like white students, it's letting them know that they also have a race, right? Like, you know, they're white, and what does that mean? And not feeling like, I can't really talk about it, it really can't come into the space, but really like disrupting and like unraveling like ways of what they know about their identity to like help them get to like that point. And just co-creating experiences. Like, vulnerability is important inside the classroom. Like, by no means like do I say I'm an expert in like the things that I talk about. I just have some knowledge, and I express when like I actually don't know, and it's okay for educators to show vulnerability, be like, I actually don't know that answer, but I will look it up. Or co-creating the experience of like, what do you all think, and not giving the answer just right away, but allowing it for our students to like simmer in it and marinate, like, okay, what is being asked, and I might know, because learning is happening everywhere. It's happening now.
Do you have any examples or stories of how students have really engaged with that sort of education in your experience?
Yeah, so this just happened like this Friday. We were doing a training for our student employees, and we were talking about privilege, and the definition that is used, it's unearned access, but we really haven't complicated what about earned privilege, right? Like, in some ways, like the mobility piece of one of my students who is first gen, has a full ride scholarship, like he has educational privilege. In some ways, somebody had to see something in him in order to do it. And we can go off tangent about that, because it's like sort of meritocracy and like different things. But he was able to challenge and be like, well, I don't kind of agree with the definition, and just giving him the opportunity to be like, why why don't you agree? And like, where is your mind going? Like, really helped us as like, actually, we haven't really talked about earned privilege. Is there such a thing as earned privilege? Like, who wrote that definition? So like, really interrogating where definitions are coming from and like, where are we making meaning of it? So.
As an English major, words were really important, are really important to me, and the power of language. And you had alluded to it earlier that if you don't have a language to express something, it becomes isolating and can promote imposter syndrome, right? So I think that you're able to give these students an opportunity to create their own language for what these things are and interrogate who's creating this language. I think is a really important piece of the educator role, and then also delivering that educator role back to them, right? And being able to listen and hear their experiences to play off to that. So thanks for sharing. I really appreciated hearing all about your story and how it's really culminated to this point and where you could be going, but where you are right now with your students. So,
I appreciate the time.
Thanks.
Yeah.